Hi, welcome to another video from Property Development System. My name is Amber. A while back I did a video on why we need to develop and the answer is that this is the fastest way I know to generate equity or get a portfolio explosion basically. So which actually helps you get the portfolio explosion. So a while back I did a video on what are the benefits of property development and why you should, being an investor, you should seriously think about getting into property development, or even if you do a couple of projects just for yourself to generate that extra equity and get that extra growth for yourself and your family. And in the video that I discussed that there are benefits like profit, the kind of profit that you can make there, the deposit comes back, capital gain, rental yield, tax benefits, higher return on capital, portfolio explosion, greater savings, how you can acquire property at cost when you do property development. If you haven't actually seen that video, I would highly recommend that you go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C, which stands for Channel Property Development System AU. And while you are there, don't forget to click on the subscribe button. And if you go right till the bottom, that was one of the first videos I released a while back. Why should I get into property development? Or you just search on Google, on YouTube, why should I get into property development? This video should pop up if you haven't seen that. But today I actually wanted to build on that video and show you in terms of numbers exactly what it looks like if you were to get into property development, or think about property development as a way to generate equity for your portfolio, or use that money as cash, as your profit, or you can use it in many different ways. So I just wanted to show you a financial feasibility on what it looks like if you were to do a 4 townhouse development, and what kind of profit does it look like, and how does it compare and contrast with a normal person who goes out, buys something, and pays full price retail for the property, and whereas you as a developer, you go there and manage to acquire property at cost. So this is a financial feasibility application. I call it the smart feasibility calculator, and this is only to wet deals, and all my students have access to it. So I've just used the same application to explain you how it's done. So if I was to do a 4 townhouse development, I buy it, let's say for example 800,000 land value, and I'm going to put 4 townhouses on it. So don't worry about the commercial leasable, because this is a little bit more advanced stuff, and this is if you are doing a mixed use development. But let's come back here and let's look at the cost of construction. So I'm in Victoria, so I'm using some numbers based on in Victoria. So if I was to get a demolition done, it will cost me $20,000 and $1,400 a square meter in order to build this. And let's say all my townhouses were 175 square meters. They were 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, and 2 car garage. And they will end up costing me $245,000 for the build price. I've got a 5% contingency on it, and which gives me $1,050,000 as the build price for my townhouses. And let's say the end value of these townhouses, for each one of them I can sell them for, which is the gross realization value, and I can sell them for $675,000 each, which gives me a total GRV of 2.7 million. So let's look at the numbers here. So this is a quick Feaso, and in this section all I do is I do it based on per unit or per townhouse, and over here I do for all 4 townhouses. This is for the whole project, this is for per unit. So I'll put a stamp duty as 6%. The stamp duty in Victoria is about 5.5. I allow a little bit extra, and this gives me my total acquisition cost. Then I split that amongst the 4, and then I get the average cost of building. It's picked up that 0.25 from one demolition that I had here, so don't worry about that. And this is just a converter, and the council land valuation is about 800, let's say. So my GRV per unit is about 675, land is 212, construction about 262,000, which includes the 5% contingency. For consultants, I've allowed about 5% of the cost of construction for getting plans, permits, DA, and this is going up to the working drawing stage. Council contribution in Victoria is, if I'm putting 4 townhouses, is about 4% of the land value. So I put 4% here. Then in GST, I am under the margin scheme, and I can explain that in a different video some other time. Marketing cost, what am I paying to my agent? Usually, normally it's about 2.2. However, the agent that I use, I put 1.1 because that's what I pay him. And we work really closely with him, so he sells all our projects at this stage, and we've got a mutual understanding of that rate. So I put in 1.1. Miscellaneous legals, I've allowed about marketing or building permit and so on. I've allowed about $3,000 per townhouse for this, and for marketing I've allowed 7,425 as commission, and I can pump that up to about $5,000 to get my drawings and everything. And this I will show you how we can calculate that. And at the bottom, based on 80% LVR when I settle on the land, and then 70% of the TDC at this interest rate, my interest costs for this project would be about, let's say 30423, 30,000 per townhouse. So that gives me about 21.76% of development margin. So if my so this gives me a profit of 120,622.45 per apartment, or $500,000, almost $500,000 on the whole project to do the 4 townhouses. Now, if this is in this calculator, I can put that, I want to make 25% development margin, and if I do that, it tells me that I shouldn't be paying more than $745,000 for land. But I just want to put in 20% because that's what I wanted to make. I'm already making above that. So I could put in 15%. That tells me if I'm negotiating how much more can I pay, and I still make 15% and so on. But I'll leave that at 20% at this stage. So all this sheet is telling me is that I'm making 120,000 if I develop this project by myself. So let's look at the yield now, and that's the main thing that I wanted to show you in this, because that's what you get when you do the development. So let's say the phase 1 of total upfront investment would be 554,000, but depending upon your serviceability and the level of equity that you got, all this can be leveraged. But for the sake of simplicity, all I've got here is what is the total cost of the project, which is, this is your total cost. So this is coming in from my TDC here, which is total development costs, and that's what my upfront contribution is. If I was to buy this, either this comes as a loan, and I've taken out the loan equation from this because everybody has there's so many different variables, so many different ways to get finance, and depends upon your serviceability, depends upon your equity contribution, and so on. So it's difficult to actually pinpoint a standard. So I've taken it out of the equation for this example. In phase 2, you've got development margin and return on equity. So let's say your instant development profit that you make if you develop it by yourself is 120,000, because all you've paid is the cost of full development. And this is going by each townhouse. So all you have paid is the cost of building and cost of doing the development by yourself, and you made a development margin of 21.76, and your upfront equity and cash contribution was 287,588.71. And where is that coming from? It's coming from because this sheet also calculates the approximate equity that you would need to be able to pull a development like that. So your return on equity is about 41.94%, which is basically the amount that was required to acquire the site, then take it through all the way to permit, and then all the way to building permit, and then all the way to through construction. That was the total equity that was required for you to pull off a project like this. So it costs you 41.94%. No, not cost you. It actually gave you return on the money that you actually put in. So the phase three comes in. So if you were to develop this and hold this townhouse for yourself as a long-term investment, let's say the area that this was being developed had a capital growth rate of 3.4%, and this is the annual capital growth rate. All this data is actually available, and the value of the property was 675. And you had a return on equity of 41.94% on that. Now this is looking at in 2016, then 5 years from then, and then another 10 years from 2016, and then another 15 years from 2016. So we are looking at the first year. In the first year, you made 120,622.45 as you have developed. But let's look at what happens in 2021. As per the capital growth rate, you enjoy the capital growth rate after the 5 year period at 3.4% per annum, and this gives you a growth in your equity, and it pushes it up to 243,000 from another 120,000. So if you were to do a development in this suburb, which had a 3.4% capital growth rate, your equity in 5 years' time from 120,000 would have been another 120,000 on top of that. So that's your profit at this stage. This is what you're making all up. And then in 10 years' time, you would have made 388,000 in equity, and in 15 years' time, your 120,000 equity would have been 560,000 in equity. So this is considering that you paid down no debt as you were going along. In phase 4, which is the rental yield, let's say you were to rent this out. So let's look at if you can rent this out for $410 a week, and you have a CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, and you can push your rent up 3% every year. And that's what it assumes. So in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and so on. So every year it actually pushes the rent up by 3% from 410 starting point. So there's nothing in the first year, and that's what's going on. So less outgoings in percentage. Let's say I've just put in 9%, which includes my agent's commission for property management, and I pay rates, and I pay insurances and so on. You can push this up to about 10% and see what it looks like. So that's what it will look like. So all I'm doing is I'm taking all this out and getting a net rental income and net rental yield, which is about 2.87, 2.99, 3.14, and so on. Now you'll say this is too low. Well, you do have a really good capital growth rate in this suburb. So remember that capital growth rate and rental yield are always going to be, they are all always inversely proportional to each other. So if you're enjoying two great a really good capital growth, your rental yield will be very low. And in some areas where you won't enjoy capital growth that high, your rental yield would be very high. Look at mining towns. There's hardly, I don't think there's been any capital growth there, unless only at the time when there was a boom in that area. But I think everyone is in a negative right now, whoever went to mining towns. But the rental yield was really, really high in that area. So that's what the whole point is, just to explain you that. So if you were to develop this and hold this in 5 years, you would have collected about 109,000 in rent. That would have given you about 3.16% average rental yield per annum. And in 10 years' time, you would have collected 148, which would have given you 4.31 average rental yield, and so on. So if you look at the growth chart, and this is what I wanted to explain to you, these are the three drivers of exponential growth that you get when you develop. So if you were a normal investor who came in and paid for someone else's development margin, you would have been buying the property right here, right at the top here, and paying both the cost and the developer's margin to the other person. But because you developed it yourself, in the first year you made that 120,000 and pocketed that in equity. And in 5 years time, what happened was, you had the development margin already, then you enjoyed the rental income for 5 years, and then you enjoyed the capital growth for the 5 year period as well. And that happened in the 10th year, and after 10 years that's what it looked like, and after 15 years that's what it looked like. So if you look at this point, this is almost doubled, more than doubled right here. Just right here, it's more than double. And if you just look at this dark blue bar here, which is basically all your costs, and you put it here in 10 years, this has already gone more than what it, this is also more than doubled. So the whole point of me explaining you this is to show you that there is the fastest way I know of to generate equity is to do property development. You could put together a summary page, but I just wanted to show you a comparison. So the total investment in development project was 554, but if you were to buy this up front, you would have paid 675, which would have required you to put in an extra 120,622, which was your profit basically. So but if you were to buy this, just go out, pay 675 and buy this, you've just evaporated your developer's equity and your developer's margin on cost. And then you've got an upfront equity contribution, which was 287 if you were to develop this, but your upfront equity contribution in this scenario would be 80% of that, which is 540,000. Again, capital growth 3.4. So if you look at this, you've basically lost. If you look at the return on equity and what you were getting if you were going to develop was 84.65, 135.13, and so on, which is almost getting halved as the time goes on. So that's what I wanted to explain, where I've done a lot of courses myself when I started out 3 years ago. I've studied a lot of other people, other investors who are doing stuff, and plus I've done my own developments. I've seen it. Property development is the fastest way to generate equity for yourself that I know of. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like our Facebook page. In fact, I would love it if you did like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/property development system. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much.